Hello. Looks like I'm live. Hopefully it works. I'm always wondering whether this is actually going to work. Hello, how are you? I hope you are well. I know this is a little bit strange having a live on a Monday. Usually I tend to do my lives on a Sunday, last Sunday of the month, but I actually ended up going out on Sunday evening. So I thought Monday will be a good time just after work. So I can see a couple of people have joined. So hello, hope you're all okay. So today we're going to be talking about financial independence. So I'm very excited. And as always, if you've got questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, or no, just put it in the chat if you do have questions. But we are going to be talking about financial independence. I hope your weekend was good. I know that there's been a lot of things happening during, the past week. So again, my prayers are just, with people of from Ukraine as well. And I just hope that, I continue to pray that we'll be okay as we move forward, especially as the countries that we have and that we speak with, and globalization and everything like that. But today I want to talk about financial independence. I'm very excited. And as always, be sure to follow me on Instagram as well, because I talk about my journey, trying to go towards financial independence and stuff like that. I talk about that on Instagram as well. So make sure you follow me at Veronia Spain. It's literally just my name. So if you do need further support as well when it comes to things like financial independence, or you don't really know how to get started, then I do have free resources in the description below as well. And I do have coaching to help you along with that. But in terms of financial independence, let's get started. So I feel like the first question with a lot of people is, what is financial independence? What do we mean by being financially independent? Does it mean that you need to retire? What's the movement? Especially if you've been hearing about the FIRE movement, so financial independence, retire early. What on earth does that mean? Does that mean I'm going to be sitting on the beach in Spain for the rest of my life? Let's talk about that. And again, if you have any questions, please do let me know in the comments, or feel free to DM me on Instagram as well. So for me, when it comes to financial independence, if you Google it, there's a lot of stuff. Like, I think financial independence is something that people have really started to talk about maybe over the last few years. I think the movement really started in the US, I would say, and then it started becoming a popular topic in the UK as well. So whenever I'm talking about financial independence, whenever people are talking about it, they will usually say that essentially what it means is that you don't necessarily have to trade time for money to pay for your expenses. Hi Marie, hope you're okay. Let me know how your weekend has gone. Glad that you could join us. But yeah, in terms of financial independence, it's pretty much like you don't have to trade time for money, essentially. And so what you will have is you will have assets paying for your expenses. So let's say that your expenses are like £2,000 or dollars a month. What it essentially means is that you have these assets that pretty much pays for that income. So that's going to cover things like your rent or mortgage, utility bills, groceries, transport, anything like that. Your assets can essentially pay for it. So when it comes to things like financial independence, you now might be asking, okay, well, why would you want to be financially independent? Why would you strive for financial independence or anything like that? And so for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's really just to have that freedom and that choice. But ultimately for me, it's actually more about the financial security. And so what I mean by that is, if I know that I'm financially independent and I know that I have assets which are basically putting things in my pocket, if I know that that's paying for my expenses, I don't have to worry about my job, or I don't have to worry about my sole income, if I had a business or anything like that. I don't have to worry about that stopping, because I'm going to have other assets paying for my expenses. And so whenever people are talking about like financial independence, why on earth would you do it? For me, I actually think that it's really important if you want to be financially secure, because as we've seen, especially with things like the pandemic, no income is really guaranteed, particularly when it comes to like our jobs, for example. It's not always guaranteed. We could be made redundant. They could say, look, we don't have money to pay you, so you're gonna have to leave. There are things that can happen. And so for me, being financially independent is a form of security, where I know that even if I lost my job, or even if I lost a sole income, I know that I have other assets paying for my lifestyle, so that I still have the security knowing that my bills are going to get paid. So that's why I'm quite passionate about it, in that I really want to encourage you guys to start thinking about financial independence if that's something that you haven't thought about. Not from a perspective of not having to trade time for money, because that's great, but from more of the perspective of having that security and knowing that you're going to be okay whatever happens. Like, even if your job says like, okay, we're going to have to cut your hours, it's fine, because you will essentially have assets still paying for your expenses essentially. So that's kind of why I think financial independence is important. It's really also important to kind of mention as well, I think one of the biggest things is that people mistaken financial independence for retirement. They're not necessarily the same thing. And I think people mistaken it because they think, if I say like, oh, I really want to be financially independent by, let's say 35, within the next, 8 years, for example, people think that I'm saying that I want to basically retire from everything and just not work, when that's definitely not the case. They're two different things. Retirement, yes, you basically be withdrawing from some type of work, but financial independence, that just means that your expenses are covered from your assets. And I can talk about like different assets further on, but they're two different things, because when you're financially independent, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to retire. You can potentially retire if you want to. So if you want to completely stop working, that is an option, and that's an option that a lot of people take, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to retire. And so it's really important to know the two different things, because whenever I'm saying, I think people should be striving for financial independence, I'm not telling you to just quit your job and sit on the beach in Spain and tell yourself that you're retired. They're two different things. And I think people really mistake it. Like they have this misconception that financial independence and retirement are both they're the same thing. They are very you can put them together if you want to, but they are actually separate things. Now, you may also hear about things like financial freedom. And financial freedom, for me, like, people have different definitions when it comes to financial freedom. But for me, financial freedom essentially just means that your assets basically cover your desired lifestyle. So not only just your essential bills, for example, but it's going to cover things like you're eating out, when you're going on entertainment, all of your holidays. That's really what that's how I kind of see financial freedom. So I kind of see them in terms of like three different buckets. But again, that's still very separate to retirement. So I could still be working and be financially independent. And I could still, love my job or love, the business that I'm doing. I could still be doing that and still be financially independent. I don't have to retire. Just because you're financially independent doesn't mean you now have to say, okay, I've stopped work. I'm not going to be doing any work whatsoever. So it's really important to know the difference, and I hope that makes sense. But of course, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Let me know in the comments. I don't bite, let me know. Or if you've got any thoughts around financial independence, are you planning to become financially independent? Is this something that you want to do? Have you got any questions around it? Just let me know. Or have you thought about retiring early? Is that something that you thought about doing as well? So I can tell about my story in terms of maybe why I'm striving for financial independence, why it's something that I've been going for, and when I want to become financially independent as well. So for me, and I did a video, I think, back in 2020, I think I did a video about this, but I didn't necessarily plan to retire, but I want to become financially independent. And my plan, my ultimate goal, was to become financially independent by 35, which can be considered quite ambitious, particularly because that was, I think when I thought about it, It's probably, I think I probably had the first idea when I was like 23. So that would have been about 12 years. But part of that journey was actually paying off my debt, for example. So part of the journey I had to step towards is actually paying off my debt first and then working on building the assets. So I'm kind of like at that, obviously at that point. But for me, I really plan to become financially independent by 35, and I will tell you why in case you're interested. So for me, actually a big reason, which is quite personal to me, but it was more from like a family perspective, because I thought to myself, when I was at work, I would see all of these kind of senior leaders who were doing positions that I may have wanted to do. And they were working all of these hours, and it was crazy hours, but obviously they were getting money for doing those hours. And for me, they couldn't necessarily see their children very much because they were always at work, because they, had these really big senior positions. And I kind of thought to myself, and I didn't feel like I would want to do that. And because I work in diversity and inclusion, I would have to interview like different women as well when we were thinking about, family friendly staff and policies. And even the women that were working part time, they were basically still working full time because they had so much work that they had to do. And so they felt really stressed, even though they were working part-time. So let's say that they were technically working 3 days a week. Really and truly, they were working like 4 or 5 days a week, and they just weren't getting paid for it. But their contract basically said that they worked part-time. And so that really affected me, because I was like, if I have, kids, if I'm growing a family, I want to be there. Like, I want to be taking them to school. I want to be there picking them up. I want to be going to their shows and things like that. I really want to have that opportunity. Because I feel like, I don't know, I just would love to do that. I would love to have that from like my personal from my personal experiences. Hi, working towards financial freedom now. Amazing. I expect to reach that goal in the next 10 years. I have around 22% of the figure I'm aiming in savings and investments currently. Well done. That's absolutely amazing. And the fact that you already have a set goal as well, I believe, like, with consistently, you can definitely do it. So keep going on, and let us know like how your journey is going as well. But for me, that was kind of like a big reason, why I was working towards financial independence. Jenny, good question. I will talk about that as well in a bit as well, in terms of how you can actually calculate your financial independence number, because that's something that you can do. But for me, it was kind of like that family aspect, but also I just wanted to have the option to kind of do whatever I want to do, and just, have the time freedom. For me, like, that's huge. But again, as well as the security, but like the time freedom, just knowing that sometimes if you don't want to work, you don't need to work. That's the kind of mindset I was almost having. And yeah, if I don't feel like I always, to be honest, even at this point in my life, I remember where I was like, I don't want to work 40 hours a week. I just didn't want to do it. Especially the times that I was working, I was like, well, I'm not productive in the afternoon, but I have to still stay in the office in the afternoon and do some work that I'm not actually really doing. So it was kind of things like that where I really then started to think about, okay, well, if I want to be financially independent, I have to be very intentional, and I have to essentially think about a plan. And so I actually had to plan out exactly, okay, well, how was I going to get there? What was my financial independence number? And we'll talk about that. And, what are the points in terms of what do I need to do in order for us to get there? So that's kind of why I wanted to reach financial independence. And if you guys have like, your reasons why, like, you can let me know in the chat, or you can DM me as well. But that's essentially what I was doing. That's why I really wanted to strive towards financial independence. So let's talk about, okay, well then, like, what's the steps when it comes to financial independence? So Jenny, you asked a question about how to calculate your financial independence number. So when it comes to financial independence, for me, there are two ways essentially that you can do it. So the first way I see that you can reach financial independence is through creating passive income. So essentially what that would be is that you wouldn't have to trade time for money. And so what that means is that if it exceeds your expenses, so let's say that my expenses are £2,000 a month, but that's going to pay for all of my essential bills, right? Including like groceries, transport, rent, utilities, whatever. If I'm able to get income that exceeds that 2,000 or at least matches that 2,000, then essentially I am financially independent. And so when I'm talking about passive income, there's loads of different things. I mean, there's investing in the stock market. So you can invest through like dividend paying stocks, for example. And essentially, if companies make profits, they can pay out their shareholders a percentage of those profits. And so what that means is that you can essentially be getting some income. So if you ever see like some of my passive income reports, one of the things that I recently started tracking is my dividend income. So it's not much now. I think I get like a couple of pounds a month or something. But the more you invest, so the more money you have to invest, the more that's likely to grow. And so essentially that could become an income stream. So let's say that rather than £2 a month I end up getting £2,000. Well, then essentially I'm financially independent because I've used that route of passive income. I hope that makes sense. I don't want to like complicate things too much, but that's one example, and that's one way people can essentially do it. But I have videos as well, like talking through investing in much more detail if you're a bit lost when it comes to investing. But the other thing is, like, for example, with creative passive income, it could be through I don't know, people have online courses that creates passive income. So like they have things pretty much on autopilot. If people buy your course, that can create passive income. Rental property, it's not always considered passive income, because you do, with all of these things, by the way, you do have to do an element of work. And for some of them, you have to do more work than others to at least get it started and get it generated. You either need to put time or money in. So for example, with dividend paying stocks, you're going to have to put some money in. So at the moment, I'm only getting like a couple of pounds or dollars a month. But if I really want to grow that, I need to invest more money. So you can either put more money in or you can put more time in. So things like online courses, that's going to require a lot of your time. Again, with rental property, that's going to acquire money or time, probably both. Because obviously you need to buy the property, and properties are not cheap. But if you do it right and you're able to rent it out and get a profit, well, then that's the passive income. Because if your tenant just keeps paying you rent and you have like a management agent, a management agent, just like literally just looking after the place, dealing with all the rental stuff, or you get like a lettings agency and they're dealing with getting tenants in, well, then that means that essentially it's at least partly passive. And so what you could do is you could go through the property route, and then like the more properties you gain, or like the more income you're able to get from that can stack up, and then that can create passive income. And so let's say, you know, you're getting £200 or dollars from every month from that one property. If you end up getting 10 of those properties, well, then that's £2,000 or dollars that you've been able to generate in passive income. And if your expenses are 2,000, well, then that means you've become financially independent. So there is loads of different ways in terms of, you know, creating passive income and things like that. But then the other way is also the idea of using, it's called something called the 4% rule. And essentially what it just is that for you to figure out your financial independence number, it's just 25 times your annual expenses. So let's say my expenses are 2,000 a month, that's 24,000 a year. So times that by 25, I think from maths, it's like 600,000 from maths. But yeah, essentially what that means is if you have like 600,000 pounds or dollars in your portfolio, essentially, then you are financially independent if you're able to withdraw a certain percentage. So that's essentially what financial independence is. Like, that's the two routes that I think that most people will either take. They'll either just take the passive income route, where they just exceed their expenses, and then that's it, or they will take the withdrawal method, which is just finding out your financial independence number. So yeah, you just times it by 25. There were always arguments in terms of whether like that's actually a good thing to do, or whether like timesing it by 25 is enough, because some people actually think you should be timesing it by 33, for example, to be a bit more conservative. So honestly, it just really depends on who you believe, essentially. But that's that. If you want to find out your REFI number, then that's it. So I think for us, we calculated, like, as an example, ours is probably going to be around 2,000 a month. So essentially what it means is that if we had a portfolio of like 600,000, then we'd be financially independent. But in terms of the routes that we're taking, we are kind of planning to take both. So we are looking at the passive income route, which is why I'm focusing a bit more on my business, but we also have an interest in the other route in terms of having 25 times our annual expenses as well. So there's different routes that you can take. So I can't tell you which route to take because I'm not a financial advisor, and also it's going to depend on your personal circumstances. But hopefully I've kind of given you the basis in terms of, if you do want to get started, or you want to think about, okay, well, how would I know if I'm financially independent? Then that's a way that you can figure it out. So Moyo, I hope I pronounced your name right, invested in the stock market. So many people will invest in the stock market. That's one route that you can take. A lot of other people, other people will invest in real estate, so property. They'll buy properties, rent it out. Many people will do that. Many people will take the business route as well. So if you have your own business, you're able to create like digital assets, for example, an online course. That's also a way that you can do it. So there are many different ways. It's just about finding which way is going to be best for you, depending on your personal circumstances. And so that's why I will never tell you, oh, you should be doing it this way or you should do it that way, because I don't know your personal circumstances and everyone is different. And you're also going to have different risk tolerances as well. So for example, someone that's maybe creating a business, they may have a different risk tolerance to someone that maybe wants to, invest in the stock market. So you have to also measure that up, and you have to measure up, what do you actually prefer? What do you enjoy? Have you assessed the risks? Things like that. That's what you want to think about. But I think like the foundation is just really, for me, and this is why I always tell my clients first, is to really think about, okay, well, what does financial independence mean for you? Because it's all well and good, like striving for this number, but if you have no idea why you're actually doing it, it's going to be quite difficult for you to keep motivated. Because otherwise I'm going to say, if I'm now investing in the stock market, but I don't really know why I'm doing it, it's very difficult for me to keep doing it, if that makes sense. So it's really important for you to understand, okay, well, if one of my goals is financial independence, again, you don't have to retire. It does not mean you have to retire. But if it's at least to become financially independent, what does that mean for me? What does that actually mean? How am I going to live my life? What does that mean? And then what does that mean in numbers as well? Because that's going to help you create a plan for you to now understand, okay, well, this is how I'm going to get there. Because what a lot of people do is that they have the dream of becoming financially independent, which is great, because then at least, okay, you know that you're now thinking about financial independence. But if you don't have the plans to back it up, then it just stays as a dream. And then it doesn't end up being a reality, for example. And so the important thing for me, for example, in our case, was having that plan and knowing how we were going to achieve it. And so for us, it was thinking about different streams. So whether it be creating a business, real estate, stock market investing, it doesn't matter which one, but at least okay, well, this is the plan that you actually want to take. And this is how you're going to get there. And so what that means is that when you're then doing things like your budget, which again, most people know that I will probably try and bring this in somehow, but this is then why your budget is now going to be helpful, because you'll then understand, okay, well, within this budget, part of that money is probably going to be going towards our future financial goals, which will probably be financial independence. So then you can now look at your budget and say, okay, well, based on how much we can then allocate towards it, or based on what our bills are like, or what our spending's like, this is how much we need to be putting towards certain things in order to make this happen, in order for us to become financially independent. And so there's a whole kind of, there are different things that you maybe need to think about if this is something that you really want to do. But for me, I definitely think it's possible. It's something, I'm pretty much on the journey now. So in my case, if you think about my example, my first thing was paying off my debt first. But it's also worth remembering that the part of the reason why I was paying off my debt was because I had the goal of financial independence. So for me, and this is again where people maybe, I feel like sometimes they kind of limit themselves, where they think that the debt is just like the only thing that they're doing, and then that's it. After they've paid off their debt, then maybe they just go back to normal, or they go back to whatever they were doing before. But for me, the debt was part of the journey. My ultimate goal is financial independence, and paying off my debt was part of that journey. So that's why that is why I was really motivated to pay off my debt. It was partly because I didn't want to make payments anymore, because I was paying stupid interest rates to creditors. That was part of the reason, but the other part of the reason was because I wanted to become financially independent. And I knew in order for me to become financially independent, one of the first steps was for me to pay off my debt. And so that's why it then started to become a priority for me to do. And I have videos as well, if you guys haven't seen. I have a lot of videos talking through how I paid off my debt and things like that. And actually, I did a live as well on my debt story, and I have all my lives on that I did in January, just talking through, different aspects of personal finances. I have that in the description as well, if you guys want to check it out, if you didn't join us in January, because we had such a nice time in January. But yeah, so essentially, if you're thinking about financial independence, one thing I would be doing is thinking about, okay, well, what does financial independence mean for me? What's my life going to be like? And then it's figuring out, how do you plan on getting financially independent? What are the steps that you then need to take to become financially independent? What route are you going to take? Is it going to be the passive income route? Is it going to be, the withdrawal rate, where you save and invest 25% of your annual expenses? And it's, again, when I said save and invest, I don't mean save £600,000 or dollars in the bank account, because that's it's going to be very difficult for you to reach that goal. Like, it will take you a very, very long time if you're just saving in the bank account. And so that's why things like investing then becomes really important, because you're likely to get there faster if you invest your money. So I'm not telling you now to start going investing if you haven't set a foundation for yourself. I have videos on how to basically setting your foundation first before you start thinking about investing. But it's why investing is so important if you want to become financially independent, because it's going to be very difficult just to save your money. So whenever I'm saving money, the money that I'm saving is either just to pay for short-term things, or it's to save to invest. Yeah, my ultimate thing is not to just save money to become financially independent. It's not going to happen. That's going to take me years, like donkey years, for me to become financially dependent. There's no way I'll be able to reach financial independence by 35 if I was just saving every penny. It's not going to work, unfortunately. Wish it did, but the way interest rates are, it's not going to work. So it's really important to consider other avenues apart from saving. Again, there's going to be times where you want to save your money, and I think I've definitely done a video on that. There's going to be times where you need to save your money, and that's fine. But there's also going to be times where you may consider investing your money, particularly if you are looking to become financially independent. But let me know, guys. Let me know if, are you working towards financial independence? Do you like the idea of it? I think, there's obviously quite a big movement. So if you've heard of the FIRE movement, that's something that I was drawn to. I was kind of drawn to at first. I'm not as much now, and I can explain why. So the FIRE movement, essentially, it's just, it's called Financially Independent Retire Early, or Financial Independence Retire Early. So these are people that essentially a lot of them are looking to also retire early and become financially independent. So they're looking to do it basically before, your normal pension age. So let's say usually it's 65. If you're looking to retire before 65, you'd essentially kind of be part of that movement. So I would consider myself part of the movement. But the way people maybe go about it is very different. So some people actually take the business route, and then they will invest in other assets. Like, it could be in stocks, it could be in property, whatever it is. But then some people will also, they will work because you can still become financially independent if you're an employee. But what some people will do is that they will go to the other extreme, and they will get a really, really high paying job. And then basically, that's my calendar telling me it's dinner time soon. But what they'll basically do is that they will get a high paying job, and then pretty much try and save and invest almost their whole income. And so what they do is they'll have a really, like, if you hear people saying a high savings rate, that's essentially what they mean, is that they're trying to save and invest. It's important to know it's not just trying to save the money, but they're trying to save and invest as much money as possible so that they can reach financial independence quickly. So they may, even though they get the high paying job, they may not like it, they may not enjoy it, and it may be quite a stressful job, but they're doing it because they want to reach financial independence very quickly. Whereas you could be in the middle, and I think I was kind of at that point where I kind of said to myself, I didn't want to just get a high paying job and absolutely hate it. I still wanted to enjoy my job, but I would still want to save and invest like a decent amount so that I could still become financially independent. So there are loads of different ways you can do it. Some people choose to basically save and invest over 90% of their income. Like people have done that. But you may decide actually you don't mind, becoming financially independent a bit later, but at least still enjoying the journey. And for me, that's something that I always try to stress with my clients. I would rather you still enjoy the journey and not have to scrimp and save every single penny and be miserable trying to get to that point. Because what happens if you then become financially independent and then you have no idea how to spend your time? Because then now you have all this time freedom, but because you've spent so much time just trying to build and sacrifice and do everything, it can be difficult to then try and wind down, if that makes sense. So you can do both. You can do either or. It really depends on what you want, how fast you want it as well. But there's ways that you can do it. But again, if you need to make more money, that's also an option without having to do like a high paying job, because you can do other income streams. Again, you can create passive income, you can get a side hustle. So there are other creative ways you can do it. Moyo says you need compound interest to make your money work. Exactly. So essentially what I'm trying to say is no matter what route you take to financial independence, just know the biggest thing I would like, if I could give one big tip, is just really understanding your why. Like, why do you want to become financially independent? What is that going to do for you? Why is that going to benefit you? And then you can now start to figure out, okay, well, now that I know my why, I can now start to work out, okay, how am I going to do it? How am I going to get there? What streams am I going to take? Like, am I going to go through passive income? Am I going to go through, the withdrawal rate? Am I going to start my own business? Anything like that, that's when you can now start to think about, okay, well, how exactly am I going to do it? And then create that plan. So again, it's very difficult to have the dream of financial independence, but then you don't have any plans to back it up, because then all you're saying is like, yeah, I want to become financially independent. Okay. When do you want to become financially independent? How are you now going to get there? How much do you need to be investing? If that's the route that you're taking, how much do you need to be investing in order for you to get to that point? Those are the type of questions that you want to be asking. Those are the type of questions I ask myself as well. That's what I always have to try and get my clients to answer, because I'm like, you just wanting to become financially independent, I don't know what that means. You need numbers to back it up. Essentially, when you have numbers to back it up, it's a lot easier for you to find out if it's realistic or not, or if there's maybe things that you maybe need to change. Because then at that point, you can now start to say, okay, well, if you need to be investing a lot more, well, then that's when you can start thinking about, okay, well, how do I make more money so that I can reach it? Or am I going to need to stretch my goal a bit further and, achieve it a bit later? Those are usually two options. It's either making more money or move your goal slightly. So you can think of it in these two different ways, but it's important to know the numbers first so that you can identify, are you going to need to make more money, or are you going to need to just change the goal? It's a lot easier for you to understand that when you actually know your numbers. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I mean, I can hold on for a couple of minutes if you guys have any questions, but I think those are my notes. I mean, essentially, I think everyone should be striving for financial independence. As I mentioned before, it's not for me. It's not for you to just, just sit on the beach. It's not like that. For me personally, I think it's just having that financial security. And I think everyone should really strive for that financial security, because we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who expected 2020 to happen, but it happened. So it's really, I think, really important for us to start thinking about it. Not a lot of people do think about it. So if you do start having conversations, that can be another video. Having conversations to people about financial independence, that's something like that's another thing, because people may find it interesting or different, and they may be asking you, why would you want to do that? And then they may be asking you the question, do you want to retire? Why would you want to retire early, without actually understanding the difference. So hopefully you guys understand the difference between, if you say I want to be financially independent, that doesn't necessarily mean you want to retire. So hopefully you can educate other people as well when they think that you're basically saying you want to retire in 10, 15 years. That's not the case. So hopefully, like, if you've not learned anything from that, hopefully that's one thing you've learned. But yeah, it's something that I do think that we should all be striving for. And I have content as well around, like, I have more, I do have a playlist as well, actually, on financial independence as well. So make sure you check that out. But again, one big tip I can give, just know your why. Understand why you're working towards financial independence, and then have the numbers to back it up. Actually create the plan, take the time to create the plan, so that you now understand, okay, well, what am I working towards? What am I actually doing with my numbers? What am I actually doing every month? And then hopefully you can now start to see why things like budgeting will help and is the vehicle. Because every time I keep saying, you don't budget just for the sake of budgeting. And I feel like some people probably look at me like, what is she talking about? This is partly why, because you're using the budget as a vehicle to move to get you closer towards financial independence. I wouldn't know how much I can essentially invest if I didn't have a budget, because I wouldn't know my numbers, right? So it's a lot easier for me to work towards financial independence because I understand exactly how much I can invest. I understand how much I can save. So hopefully you guys can kind of see how personal finance, that there are so many things that kind of interlink, and it's not just about money, it's about the life that you want to live, right? So even when I'm talking about financial independence, it's not just for me to have expenses paid for, but there's a reason behind it, right? I don't want to have to worry about paying bills. I don't want to have to worry about being made redundant at my job. I want to be able to have time freedom. I want to be able to spend time with my kids. That is not, I didn't say money in any of those reasons, right? So it's important to know that whenever I'm talking about personal finances, it's not just about money, but it's about how you can use that money as a tool. Yeah, does that make sense? I talk about this more on my email list as well. So if you haven't joined my email list, if you download my free money management guide, you'll start to get emails. So that's exclusive content that I send to people on my emails. So make sure you download that guide if you want to get emails from me. But what I'm trying to say is that don't just think about personal finances as literally just like money, or even financial independence, or as just not money. Even though I'm saying like you need numbers to back things up, the why bit is probably the most important part. Like, what is that actually going to do for you? And that it's not really got anything to do with money, right? It's actually got to do with other things like your desired lifestyle, what you want to do. So it's really important to know the difference. So I hope that makes sense. As always, if you need further help in terms of actually how to create the plan for financial independence, figure out exactly how you're going to work towards financial independence, I do have coaching as well. That's exactly what I do. We go through everything essentially and understand exactly how much you're going to be investing to become financially independent and what route you're going to take. But I also have videos as well, and I've got free resources in the description below. I'm gonna leave it here because I need to make dinner, because I've prepped dinner, haven't completely made it. But if you do need help with coaching, I will put it in the chat for you. You can book a call with me. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me, guys. I know this was on a Monday. I'm going to try and keep it to Sundays. My live's on Sunday. So hopefully around the last Sunday of the week, I'm going to try and do my lives then. But I hope you have an amazing week. I do have a video out tomorrow all about my budget update for March. So let me know if you've also DM me if you've done your budget for the month. Have you? How's it going? How did February's budget go? Let me know. Feel free to DM me on Instagram at Baronia Spain as well. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. And I hope you guys have an amazing evening. And I will see you soon. Bye.